In the midst of a dank March morning, the robins are working just to the south, according to my informant in Deep River. But not here, not here. In the midst of a rash of emails, internettings, bare start on taxes, no words of love yet, and the wood stove downdrafting, in the midst of which this peripheral vision, a drift of turkeys, scrawny reptilian necks, suddenly fine. In the Egyptian way, they slide in and out, then in. One of them flaunting tail feathers like a royal straight flush. By a bog full of wood frogs warbling, this is before the World Wide Web, before the phone, before coal, smoke, and steam engines, before the wheel, in the beginning. Yeah. And now I'm going to turn things over to our hostess, Katie Irish, whose magnificent dream this whole glorious West End poetry series is, and will be.
This was never part of the dream. The dream only was just to have people read poetry on the porch, and it was Rennie that didn't want it to stop, so we had to find a place. And again, I'm so fortunate. Thank you again, Attorney Peck, for allowing us to use your museum-like home. It is very, very gorgeous, so welcome. It is so fun to have this series to look forward to once a month, and I am especially excited to have Kellen and Jasari, is that the correct way to say your beautiful name? It's so important to me to have poetry accessible to everyone. It really should not be, you have to be a certain age. It really should be to everyone, so it means so much to me that you were able to come. I had the opportunity to go to the Greater Hartford Arts Academy, where I believe Marilyn is giving the commencement speech this year. The energy, the enthusiasm in that environment, it was not like my high school at all. I remember going in and hearing piano playing, seeing students dancing. It's just really intoxicating to be in that kind of creative environment, so I'm really happy that you could join us. So without further ado, let me introduce poet Jasari Padilla, is that how you say your name? Is a 4-year creative writing media arts major at the Greater Hartford Arts Academy. She lives in Hartford and was the 2015 recipient of the Wallace Stevens Poetry Scholarship from the Friends and Enemies of Wallace Stevens. Please welcome Jasari.
Hi. Hello. My name's Jasari, and this poem is titled Baptism. I've learned to spare what's failing, if it can keep what's living alive still, maybe just a while longer. Carl Phillips. The bathroom ceiling ruptured. Cold drops of water and clumps of plaster fell onto my bare shoulders. They traveled down my back to my hips that used to proudly display bruises he left behind. My scarred knees were raw, aching from the tub of cloudy boiling water. I swore I saw his hands reach out from beneath the surface and spread my legs apart. I submerged my body until my eyelashes floated like dark seaweed. The water burned my lips, and I was reminded of his teeth trying their hardest to draw blood. It was safe there, where my joints only grown about the small tub and not a stiff mattress. The smell of molding drywall covered the aftertaste of his chapstick, and I counted the seconds before I needed to breathe. The burn in my throat fought with a tightness in my chest. I heard his voice in a slice through me. My hands instinctively went for my neck, half expecting to feel his bony fingers. My body shut up to the cold air of the bathroom. A drop of water fell onto my head, and I watched his hands disappear as I took a breath.
Thank you. That was really amazing. And it's pretty incredible that you were the Wallace Stevens poet. And you mentioned Carl Phillips, who is this year's Wallace Stevens poet. And he's reading next year at next week at your school, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing, yes. Poet Kellen Navari is a senior at the Greater Hartford Arts Academy in the Creative Writing Media Arts Department. She is the 2016 winner of the Regional Gold Key and a National Silver Medal from the Scholarship Art and Rating Program. She will attend Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon in the fall, where she plans to study anthropology, sociology, and international relations. Try to have some fun, too, with that. It's a lot of study.
This piece is entitled Mama. Mama, I want to tell you everything. How my heart hurts when the sky is gray, but the rain helps me breathe. How I like to leave my shoes inside and sink my feet into damp earth. Sometimes I stand there for hours, letting my body submerge until I'm covered in mud. The mud is where Daddy paid to have grass seeds planted. He's always had the money to take care of things. Those seeds never sprouted. Daddy said the sap from the cherry tree acidified the ground. Maybe it's just that money isn't enough to make things grow. But still, it's my favorite tree. I never understood why it only blossomed some years, until you told me it's biennial. One year the pinks were so bright, they covered the entire driveway in soft blankets of spring. You were dancing in them, gathering petals in your hands to throw in the air. Mama, I want to tell you everything about the rocks on my windowsill I collected at the river. That day I talked to the pebbles, perched down on my knees so they could hear me, so I could hear them too. I want to listen like you do, when you stand real close to the trees. Those stones have lost their wet sparkle, and I hope you aren't upset with me. You always taught me to ask permission before taking earth from its home. The rocks sit next to the coral you scolded me for stealing from the ocean in Hawaii. That was the trip when I spilled tears in your lap. I told you I was afraid of taking up space. I asked you about rape and you told me your story but never asked for mine. Mama, I wish we knew how to ask each other the right questions. Mama, I know you never meant to take me away from home. You can't help that the sick got to be too much. I forgive your heart for not having the strength to keep beating. I tried to forget that sleeping bag that couldn't protect me from ambulance sirens, the strong arms that carried me out but couldn't shield me from the image of your body on a stretcher. Mama, I forgive you for putting your life first. You let Daddy do the raising as you built yourself strong. He paid for all the bills and dance lessons and pretty clothes and books and bras and tampons. He was there for every broken heart and helped repair them as best he could. Mama, I needed you. Mama, I am not a little girl anymore. I'm a woman now, sculpted with curves I had to learn to love on my own. Mama, I feel you in my wrists as I chop onions on the cutting board. My hands are covered in wounds that leak your blood, and somehow that's deeply comforting. Maybe I'm careless with knives and stovetops just so I can feel you, just so I can remember what it's like to be patched up with Band-Aids and aloe. I send you pictures of what I'm cooking because I want to show you that even when we are apart, I still breathe you. Mama, I'm so sorry I missed Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. I'm sorry I stopped coming over. I'm sorry I abandoned you when I've only ever ached for your touch. Mama, I want to tell you everything. I want to pour all of my stories into you so we can make up for lost time because I am not that little girl anymore. 18's coming so soon. The more adult I become, the more afraid I am of growing away from you. It's been 11 years since the transplant, but you are still alive with me, more tangible than ever because I understand now that you never left, that sometimes we have different ways of speaking, but our voices are made from the same song. So let's talk about the sky and the flowers and hurting and what it means to heal and to forgive and to love. Mama, let's find each other again.
Thank you both so much. I don't know why your poetry it shakes me. I think maybe I don't listen to enough younger voices. But let's have another round of applause. I really appreciate it. I think there may be a couple other chairs over here. I see some people standing in back. It's nice to see such a big crowd.
There are 2 in here.
Yeah, there are 2 chairs in here for those.
There are chairs around.
Yeah, you just may have to, you can sit there if you want. Yeah, that's fine.
Spaces for people.
That's perfect. Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much. I'm going to do something kind of tacky now because I leave the donation. I used to leave it on the table with the food, but nobody ever saw it. So I'm gonna pass this around. This was an old stationery box of mine, so you just wanna, if anybody, so. It is so nice to have John read tonight. It has been really wonderful to have had a chance to get to work with John, and we email several times a week. It's very fun. I went to John's workshop maybe about a month or so ago, and it was really incredible. I really enjoyed it. Poet John Stanizzi is the author of the chapbook Windows. His full-length collections are Ecstasy Among Ghosts, Sleepwalking, Dance Against the Wall, After the Bell, and Hallelujah Time. His poems have appeared in Prairie Schooner, the New York Quarterly, Tar River Poetry, Rattle, Passengers North, the Spoon River Quarterly, Poet Lore, the Connecticut Review, Freshwater, Boston Literary Review, and many other publications. He has work forthcoming in the Raintown Review, Off the Coast, Black Cat Moon, and Lips. John has read at many venues throughout Connecticut, including the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival, R.J. Julia Booksellers, the Arts Cafe Mystic. His work has also been featured on Garrison Keillor's The Writer's Almanac. John is currently an adjunct professor of English at Manchester Community College and is currently at work on 2 projects, Hallelujah Time Volume 2 and Sundowning. He lives with his wife, Carol, in Coventry. Thank you, John.
Do I have to worry about all you guys who are standing?
Worry.
I feel bad that you're
Don't worry about that.
curl up on the floor.
You know, we could really sit some.
Thank you so much, Katie, for creating these series. It's been amazing. And Rennie, thank you for, well, there's too much to thank you for, but thank you for all of it. Josari and Kellen, it really is an awesome thing to have young people here. I was a young person once.
Hallelujah.
Oh boy. And Michael, of course, for offering us an incredible home for us to read poems. So let's read some poems. Oh, I'm going to read for somewhere between 20 and 23 or 24 minutes. Whenever I'm in front of a speaker, I always feel better knowing how long I'm going to be trapped. So 22, 23, 24 minutes. No more than that. Okay? All right, so sundowning. Sundowning is a term used to describe the anxiety that Alzheimer's patients begin to feel toward the end of the day. We watched that with my father for 10 years, and it manifests itself in gloom or sadness, sometimes anger, oftentimes deep silence. And this poem is called Sundowning. August dusk on its last legs, me sitting across the hall from your shadowy bedroom, a mound of sheets and sleeping sounds. Then the hesitant movements that signal waking. Seeing you from the back, sitting on the edge of your bed, it seems to me that when you turn around, you will know who I am, though that's just me dreaming, you waking. For a while, we took my father to Yale for, not so much for treatment, but sort of to have his brain be like a loner so they could do research. And for a while, that did him good. He felt a sense of worth. And then, of course, that faded. This is called DLROW. The first test they give him is to see if he can spell world backwards, which he can, easily. Such demeaning, useless exercises at Yale, Mecca of miracles, where she is sure they'll give him a pill one day to reverse it all and bring him back. But for now, no matter the day of the week, his birth date, the season, the one thing he knows for sure is that the world is backwards, and it will be that way from now on. On January 12th, the poet C.D. Wright passed away. She was just 66 years old, Carolyn Wright. And I was reading some of her work, and I came across this bit of prose by her. She says, every year, the poem I most want to write, the poem that would in effect allow me to stop writing, changes shapes, changes directions. It refuses to come forward, to stand still while I move to meet it, embrace and coax it to sit on the porch with me and watch the lightning bugs steal behind the fog's heavy veil. Listen for the drag of John boats through the orchestra of locusts and frogs. So it turns out that that's the epigraph for a poem that I wrote called This Is Not the Poem I Most Want to Write. And I noticed when I was putting this reading together tonight that I invoke Elizabeth Bishop, I think 3 or 4 times, and she's in this poem too. This is not the poem I most want to write, after Elizabeth Bishop. Here at dawn, in mid-January, there are no lightning bugs, nor is there an orchestra of locusts and frogs, though an ensemble of rain has been tuning all morning on the porch, and the last tatters of a timid snowfall make their ascension, lazy ghosts, slow spirits of snow, clearing the way for the brown grass to take a breath and remind us that the wood smoke, tangled around the bony, leafless branches, tells the trees about the deep beauty of their own souls, their own green exuberance. And though this may not be the poem I most want to write, for now it is my only possession. And like Elizabeth's man moth, I will give it to you. Here, take it, cool as melted snow, clean and tasting of earth. This next poem is from my granddaughter, Taylor. She's a sophomore up at Keene, and it's actually a show and tell poem. Carol said to me, "Why are you cutting things out and pasting them to plastic?" I said, "It's show and tell. Calm down. I got this." So for Christmas, she gave me a copy of Angela Davis's The Meaning of Freedom. It was a signed copy. And when I first looked at the book, I was taken by the signature, and because my response to it was that it looked so much like 3 dancers. And then the poem ended up moving from Angela Davis's signature to Elizabeth Bishop's poem Santarem, and the 2 rivers, the Tapajos and the Amazon, where they flow, one dark brown and the other blue until they come together. And then I thought of Bishop, come in. Then I thought of Bishop talking about the travelers leaving blue eyes and brown babies, and so all of that inspired the poem. And here's Angela Davis's signature.
All righty.
There it is,
Okie doke.
right?
Wow.
Right, the three dancers. And here is the Amazon is the Brown River, and the Tapajos is the Blue River, and they're on their way to the Atlantic.
I like it.
And I never tire, of that picture. So the poem is called Gift, and it begins with an epigraph by Elizabeth Bishop from the poem Santarem. She says, that conflux of two great rivers, Tapajos, Amazon, that watery, dazzling dialectic. For my granddaughter, Taylor. Taylor, my granddaughter, is a sophomore at Keene, and she is working on finding her way, as she should be, learning what it means to be a woman, half Italian, half black, a black woman in America. I worry. She smiles beautifully and hands me her Christmas gift. I am her grandfather. I can say she smiles beautifully. The gift is a copy of The Meaning of Freedom and other difficult dialogues by Angela Davis. It is signed, and I think, selfishly, that I have taught her well. When I'm able to spend time alone with the book, the first thing I do is stare at Angela's signature, 3 wide looping symbols, which I know say A-Y-D, though they look like dancers, slender as the wind. The A has softly lowered herself into a split and raised her right arm gracefully above her head. The Y has leapt into the air, an allegro of grace before the D bows her wrist a supple arc. The 3 dancers are followed by a sharp straight line that says, the dancing does not stop here. Though you have danced from Dynamite Hill to Santa Cruz, danced a bunch above the jeers of go back to Russia, go back to Africa, though you'd been to neither yet, and danced into the heart of this young woman in New Hampshire, half Italian, half black, who is also dancing, moving like those 2 great rivers, Tapajos and Amazon, where they come together and drift toward the massive Atlantic. Thank you very much. Of the rivers?
That's what you gotta do for show and tell.
All right. I thought she was going to be here. She's not here. Oh, she had to pick up another one of my granddaughters. So Bob Marley's song "I Shot the Sheriff" always sounded to me like a song about a person who was willing to accept partial responsibility for something, but not accept the whole deal. And so my version of "I Shot the Sheriff" is about me being willing to accept partial responsibility for indiscretions, but not entire responsibility. And then I'll draw your attention to something silly. Each of the stanzas ends with a couplet that if you were to sing it, you could sing it to, I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy. Okay, so. And it starts with an epigraph from Ecclesiastes, thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they shall both be alike good. I shot the sheriff. I didn't do it, Billy wept, bouncing up and down on the edge of his hardwood chair and punching his finger at me as I came in. He did it. He did it. Johnny wrote the word. He was the 3rd grade vandal who had defaced the book room with a magic marker that I had stolen from Sister Maria Richards' gray metal desk, but he wasn't telling the truth, and I was shocked. It was true that I had removed a couple of books from the shelf, but I didn't do the graffiti. It was Billy who had quickly scrawled the word ass on the wall before I replaced the books to hide the word, immediately feeling remorse. I'll never forget the image of him selling me out through his fear and tears, crying and calling my name. Oh, the lessons learned that afternoon. I took the books down, but I didn't tag the wall that day. When we were only kids, 17 or so, I'd sneak out of the house at about 2 a.m., shift my father's battered van into neutral, roll down the drive, and started on the run. Mark would sneak out and wait for me in the shadows of the hedges in front of his house. Then we'd drive the length of Old Main Street, and every time we passed the sign that read, "Speed is checked by radar," I would yell, "Fuck the radar," and drop it into low. The van would lurch and growl, and we would laugh. This was a coming of age, a rite of passage whose adolescent light was fading out. And though we couldn't comprehend the truth, Old Main Street was getting smaller, and we were moving farther and farther away from innocence. I'd sneak the van out, but I never took the Dodge Coronet. These days, I'm riding the spiral come round, and while it seems everything is hurtling forward much faster now, it's all the same. Part of me completely understands. It's all about perception and urgency, and whatever moments I am allowed to take another breath and look around, I will praise the silence, because the silence was the voice that spoke of Babylon and greed, the voice that showed me where the grandeur is, in the trust that smolders in my children's eyes. The spider web created overnight, a magnificent gem in the light of the rising sun. The baby catfish, smaller than my pinky, that rest in the mud at the bottom of the frozen pond. And the billion mysteries I will never comprehend. I'm inconsistent, but tomorrow I'll rethink it all. And from the same book, this is Natural Mystic. And it's a poem about how my mother has been dealing with the death of my father. Natural Mystic. And it starts with an epigraph from 1 Corinthians. "For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised." Natural Mystic. She sits on my father's Barcalounger, on his imaginary lap, and speaks to him, thanking him for visiting today. She tells him all the places she's seen him, in the small plane in the July sky, in the hummingbird she has waited days for, in the squirrel she says looks empathetically at her. He's been dead 4 years now, but my mother tells me she saw my father plain as day on the license plate, Jon, and in the butterfly, flitting above the bird bath. She sits on his lap, hugging his triangular American flag, tells him she saw him, that she'll look for him again tomorrow, that she'll know when she sees the white van, the shooting star, the sunflower seedling in the geranium pot, the moth clinging to the screen, that it's him, he's there, he'll always be there. She doesn't have to worry. So I'm working on Hallelujah Time Volume 2, and those are, again, Bob Marley inspired poems. And this is a poem called Buffalo Soldier, and it's for one of my best friends, Jimmy Sincere, who was killed in Vietnam. He was born on November 15th, 1949, and he was killed on November 22nd, 1968, in Quang Nam in Vietnam. He had been there about 3 weeks, and I was sending him some things. I found a box that seemed just the right size to fit both of your blue button-down shirts and your battered copy of Thomas's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Dog, stolen inexplicably from the school library at East Hartford High. I think it had to do with your presumption that Bob Dylan and Dylan Thomas had some cosmic connection that included you. I also sent you Blonde on Blonde that day. I mailed your box at 10 a.m., and by 3, Suzanne had told me that you were dead. And for years and years, I have wondered who got your box, and did they love what was inside? And this poem is called Black Man Redemption, and it's just an homage to all of the men and women who were killed by the police from 2014 to 2015 in 1 year. So it's Black Man Redemption for the many. In no particular order, and with the understanding that the sonnet is too short, there's Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, and Dontre Hamilton. John Crawford, Ezell Ford, Dante Parker, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice carrying a toy pistol, Rumain Brisbane and his pill bottle gun, Jeremy Reed, Tony Robinson and Eric Harris, Philip White and Freddie Gray. There's Walter Scott, whose taillight was out, shot in the back. The sonnet is too short and not nearly powerful enough to proffer redemption for these divine lives. Okay. So this next poem is a little lighter. This is a poem that I wrote for my brother. This is a poem I wrote for my brother. I don't have a brother. But if I did, this poem would be the poem I would write for him. And to all the cool stuff we did as kids. We wouldn't let anyone mess with us at school. And when we were home, we were best friends, keeping bad stuff from mom and dad. At night, we'd talk until we fell asleep. Tex up on the top bunk and me down below, laughing our asses off until we cried. I never went to camp, but if I did, I would have gone with Tex, who could have helped me make a pot holder to bring home to mom. And I would have told Jane that Tex liked her and asked if she would go out with him. And his name, this brother I didn't have, his name would be Tex. I really like that name.